Hey everybody, good morning. Welcome to the Morning Devo with Bo. Bo Willett's my name. And hope you guys, everybody's doing well. And getting ready to get in the Word a little bit. It's a good morning, a little chilly out today. But our home's always super cold. So if you want to know how it is here, it's always like 50 degrees in the house. So I don't know how you guys like kind of set your temperature, but ours is always like super cold. It's like, but it's kind of good. It's great for ski season, though I had to defer all of my ski tickets, my season passes to next year, 2025-26 season. If I'm still on the planet, right? If we're not taken up, which would be awesome, right? The blessed hope. Yeah, if we're still here, I'm not going to be able to ski this year with the kind of the recovery from the moto accident I had the other day, the crash, and no one hit me. It's just me, just user error, and bailed. So, I used to race BMX when I was young, and in Southern California, a lot of us kids skated and loved bikes. So when I was doing that, I remember crashing all the time. So it was just a preview of coming attractions for me. It's like, I'm always going to be bailing no matter what I do. I play hockey. I get a ton of concussions. I do this. For those that haven't hung out with me too long, I used to play a lot of ice hockey, and that was just such a passion of mine, and then I had to stop playing due to head concussions. So that was a real bummer. But it's good to be still in the kind of around the ice, just helping out players. But everything I kind of touch, I tend to break myself. So anyway, I take it literally. Crucify thyself, right? Crucify yourself. Anyway, hey, you could always check out the archives at my YouTube channel. Let's see how this arm's doing. Oh my gosh. Oh, that is better. Wow. I got it up there a little bit, right? That arm kind of went up there pretty good. So you could check out Bo Willett at youtube.com, and you can get the archives of these devotions that I do. I do them Monday through Friday, usually at 9 a.m., and it's pretty cool. I go through the Bible in my devotions, so if you've never gone through the Bible, or you have friends that have never gone through the Bible, you can always go through it with me. I'm kind of a Southern California person, grew up atheist, grew up very secular, humanist, materialist, naturalist, and certainly had a very much a rude awakening when I was around 17, 18 years of age, in just simply reading through the Bible. So that's how I do my devotions. I read through the Bible, and I bring to it maybe an interesting perspective just because of my background and my teaching, being around more Marxism philosophies growing up with a father who is very much influenced by progressive thought, la-di-da, but that's kind of my background. So anyway, let's see. Tina says, my boys race BMX and still have two of their bikes hanging in the garage. It was fun to watch. That's awesome. They were probably way better than me. I won one BMX race, or a series of races to win, the trophy when I was young. And I had to be like 13 years old or something, 14 when I was racing BMX. But I crashed all the time. What do I mean? Naturalist, Craig, what I mean by naturalist is that that only nature is what there is, only the natural world. So there's no metaphysical world. So that's what I mean by naturalist, if that makes sense. No metaphysical world, no kind of existential world, I guess you could say, something outside of us. It is just us and the things that we see and the laws that we find out, and that's it. So That's what I mean by naturalist. So hope that helps. So chapter 3, let's kind of roll through this. Tina says her son won state in BMX. My heavens, man. I didn't know I had a BMX mom in the house. You know, I would have never even mentioned it. Haha. Okay, so it says King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide. So that's a pretty big statue. I was trying to kind of wrap my mind around 90 feet tall. So a basketball net rim is 10 feet. 10 feet tall. And so you think 9 of those together, stacked on one another. Man, that is big, right? That 90 feet. Just think if you were playing basketball and you had to shoot a basket, or the basket was 90 feet in the air. Man, that would be really tall. I'm wondering how big the tree is out. We have a big tree out in the front yard. Our neighbor does, a pine tree. I wonder how tall that is. It's pretty tall, but I would imagine 90 feet is even taller than that. So this thing could be seen quite a distance, I would imagine. And it says it was 9 feet wide. Okay, so pretty wide too. Not very wide, but pretty wide. And it says, and it set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. So obviously it's set up in an area where people could, kind of have a festival, right? In a plain, I think of like Burning Man festival, or something like that, where you're kind of at these like, outdoor raves, nowadays in our day, where they have giant statues and big stick figures. And, there's the old, what is it? The Wicker Man, the old what was that? 1960s? That movie came out, The Wicker Man, really weird, about kind of like paganism and how this police officer gets kind of basically murdered by this incredibly weird cult. But, the scary thing about that whole movie was the giant Wicker Man, this weird creation, of this weird cult. And, you think of the plains, right? Where, a lot of, again, like kind of festivities could go on, things like that. So I don't know if that's painting a good picture of kind of this chapter, but hopefully maybe you see kind of what Nebuchadnezzar was doing. He had a giant statue, but it was in a plain. So you see that kind of festive, that kind of, again, that kind of Burning Man culture. Everybody could be out there, see this thing. You could see it from the mountain countries too. You just look into the plains of Dura, and there was this giant statue. And it said, then he sent to the high officials, and he says, officers, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the provincial officers to come to the delegation of the statue he had set up. So all the officials came and stood before King Nebuchadnezzar and the statue. Okay, so he has this official, big giant gathering there. I wonder if this is kind of like something that we kind of do, like maybe how we can see it is, how you have like an inauguration when we have a new president, and it's always in front of what? It's in front of the what? The White House, right? I want to say it's in front of the White House, or it's in front of one of our main kind of government areas. And, everybody's there, and it's kind of crowded, and it seems like a real big thing, And, there's this kind of allegiance, that's done at that time, kind of like, hey, I'm getting sworn in, I'm going to do my due diligence and all these things like that. And that's kind of maybe what this was like. It was like, kind of have this official, government initiation going on. I don't know about you, but I grew up with a lot of initiations. In Southern California, when you're growing up, and probably everywhere where we're growing up in the United States, especially in the 70s and in the 80s, it was super fun. We didn't have technology like we do today, so we could just be outside and running in the fields and, things like that. It was pretty cool. For us California people, we'd run in the mountains and hike all the time. Even as little kids, it was really cool. But there was a ton of initiations, right? It's like all your little gangs that you have, and it's like, hey, to be in our gang, this is what you got to do, and this is what you got to do. And you could see that Nebuchadnezzar's doing that. There's something about loyalty that I find very fascinating and actually quite important to your life. If there's one thing we could get right from the beginning, is that Nebuchadnezzar, even as a person who doesn't know the Lord, is obviously influenced by false worship of deities and gods and all this stuff like that. He's prone, if you will, to go astray. Nebuchadnezzar's very prone to go astray. He sees the importance of loyalty. People being with him, and he's going to do it wrong. Don't get me wrong. He's going to do it. He's going to go off, off the rails, so to speak. But what's your loyalty like? Where you work, your family, the people that you love, are you loyal? What does your loyalty look like? How does that look? When does loyalty become compromise? That's a good question. When you're loyal to someone, but then there's something that's asked of you that's not right. It could be a family member, something within a family, and you say no, and you put the brakes on, you put the boundary up. No, we're not going that direction. And they might get mad. But what if you always had this 100% loyalty, like no matter what? It would become wrong, right? You could see where loyalty can go too far, where it becomes, there's no discernment in loyalty. We want to be loyal to people. I think that's a great quality of our heart, is to be loyal. But the question always comes is, am I discerning in my loyalty? Is my loyalty just kind of so radical where I don't have any boundaries at all? That's not good either. We're going to see that there's some loyalty to Daniel, to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to the government of Babylon. They are in it. And they have been groomed by the University of Babylon to work in government. But yet we see that there is going to be a stopping point. And here we go. Then a herald shouted out, "People of all races and nations and languages, listen to the king's command. When you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, harp, and all these instruments, bow to the ground and worship King Nebuchadnezzar's gold statue. Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown into a blazing fire." So at the sound of the musical instruments, all the people, whatever race or nation or language, bowed to the ground and worshiped the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So it's loud. If you've ever been around a music department at a university, which I went to one, right? That's what I did in college. I was part of a music, degree program. And horns, loud. Man, could you imagine just a bunch of loud, horns and these other instruments going? It says some of the astrologers went to the king and informed on the Jews. It said, those Jewish people, they're not listening to a thing that you're saying. Right? And they said to King Nebuchadnezzar, Long live the king. You issued a decree requiring all the people to bow down and worship the gold statue when they hear the sound of the music. And it says, or the instruments. That decree also states that those who refuse to obey must be thrown into a blazing furnace. But there are some Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whom you have put in charge of the province of Babylon. They pay no attention to you, your majesty. They refuse to serve your gods and do not worship the gold statue you have set up. Now, I find this as kind of a little microcosm of something that happens all the time. And that is, someone's telling on you, right? There's kind of like a tattletaling that's going on. Notice Nebuchadnezzar doesn't single out these people, but it seems like someone else does. Someone looks at those Jewish people and says, man, those Jewish people, man, they don't got it together. I'm going to tell on them. And then, then there's this, then people are starting to bag, right? And starting to rip those people apart. Oh yeah, they're those people, though they're bad. So it's amazing how some people just can't seem to let it alone. Some people just can't seem to just, hey, these people don't want to bow down. Okay, it's none of my business. I'm going to just go about my thing. But instead they go, no, it's our business, man. We're going to tell on the, and notice it was some of the astrologers. So it's some of these people that couldn't interpret the dream, probably that Nebuchadnezzar had it before from chapter 2. And they probably are a little bent at those, Jewish people, for their, now they're the head of the province of Babylon. So maybe there's jealousy. Now, it reminds me of my life. Is there jealousies and resentment and bitterness that's in my life that makes me kind of, I can't let go of people. I'm wanting to tell on them. I'm wanting to tattletale. I'm wanting to get back at them. I'm waiting for them to get out of step so I could find out and pounce, pounce. That's a song by Dance Gavin Dance. And so sorry about all my music references, but I got too many of them in my mind. But yeah, I think about that kind of thing, and I go, gosh, that's a bummer that we're like that as human beings. Instead of really looking at people through the lens of love, love does no harm to a neighbor. Love does not seek its own. Love is not provoked. Love hopes all things. It hopes all things in people. I'm not waiting for the shoe to drop. Oh, I can't wait till, our president does something weird again so I could just, bag on him some more. I could call him out again. I can't wait for those officials to do something wrong so I could just criticize them some more. Have that kind of attitude. Man, what a bummer when we have those kind of attitudes. And I don't think it's very Christ-like at all. But yet we tend to roll that way in our culture a lot. So I can see our own kind of mess ups, our own sins in what the astrologers are doing to tattle on these Jewish people that aren't bowing down. It says that Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage and ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. Of course, this would have been embarrassing to the king. It says, and when they were brought in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my gods or to worship the gold statue I have set up? I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I have made when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace, and then what God will be able to rescue you from my power?" So Nebuchadnezzar obviously got that dream interpreted by Daniel, the one from chapter 2. And remember, that interpretation from the Lord said that Nebuchadnezzar, you are the head of gold. So what does Nebuchadnezzar do? He makes a full statue of gold and he sets it up, and he's prideful. He really thinks it's all about him. Whenever you get power, you get good at things. Sometimes getting good at things can give you options and opportunities. And sometimes that can lead to places of powerful leadership. And then there's the opportunity that you have in your life now to get cocky and to get prideful. And a lot of us fall into that trap. And, there's the New Testament warning, for us that we can fall into the devil's trap and be puffed up with pride. We have many passages in the Bible that says, pride comes before a fall, right? Knowledge puffs up, but love edifies. There's a lot of puffing up that can happen in our hearts and in our lives. And Nebuchadnezzar is just filled with this kind of pride, man. He's just going to town. What's your pride like today? What's my pride like today? Is it something that is, can I be corrected today? Can I be, can someone, challenge me today? And the answer a lot of times is, well, no, they can't, because I think I'm right. I think I got it together. And that's just not a good attitude to have. I got to be flexible. I got to be willing to be corrected, stand corrected. And those are things that, I'm just going to have to think through and really check my heart. Am I having that Nebuchadnezzar heart? So I can see some evil hearts going on. The astrologers tattletaling, Nebuchadnezzar filled with pride. And it says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves. If we are thrown into the blazing fire, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods nor worship the gold statue you have set up. So the stubborn Jews, right? They just will not, become like other nations. They instead just stick to their Judaism. And it says, Nebuchadnezzar was so furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face became distorted with rage. He commanded that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual. Then he ordered some of the strongest men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So they tied them and threw them into the furnace, fully dressed in their pants, turbans, robes, and other garments. And because the king in his anger had demanded such a hot flame in the furnace, the flames killed the soldiers as they threw the 3 men in. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego securely fell into the roaring flames. But suddenly Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, Didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace? Yes, your majesty, we certainly did, they said. Look, Nebuchadnezzar shouted, I see 4 men unbound, walking around in the fire, unharmed, and the 4th looks like a god. Interesting, right? A 4th person there, someone like a god. So it must have been shining. We can think of, that interesting kind of idea of God. What we saw early on is there's these appearings of God as a pillar of fire. And, this kind of glory, this kind of shining that we see, this bright, burning. Remember the burning bush, even though it wasn't burning, but it was illuminated, right? So that's what Nebuchadnezzar is describing, this kind of illumination. And all he could think of is this is a deity. This is some form of non-human kind of person that's in there. And that's kind of neat that the Bible always talks about God having personhood, person likeness, qualities. We are made in the image of God, which is very cool. God is spirit, but yet we see that God can take a body. And we see that throughout the scriptures. And it says then, and this is Old Testament scriptures, we see this. We're not even touching the incarnation, right? Christmas, right? The incarnation. God coming to earth, taking a body and permanently taking that body into heaven. It says, then Nebuchadnezzar came as close as he could to the floor of the flaming furnace and shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High, come out, come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stepped out of the fire. Then the high officers and the governors and the advisors crowded around them and saw that the fire had not touched them. Not a hair on their head was singed, and their clothes were not scorched. They didn't even smell the smoke. I think another cool thing I think of this morning is, do I talk like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Hey, God is able. But if not, know this, that we're just not going your route. I love that. Like, God is able to heal. God is able to fix. God is able to do the miraculous. God is able to do those things. I want to affirm those things in my life. God is able to heal me. He's able to take care of me. He's able to resurrect me, which is awesome, right? But I love how they're so like flint, man. Their faces are set to God, where they're like, even if he doesn't in this circumstance, we're not going your route. We're not going to go your route. Wouldn't that be great in the end times when the Antichrist is reigning and the mark of the beast is being pressure to everybody? Have we not seen over the last 4 years a situation where the world is under government rule and mandates and stuff like that? Could you imagine that when it comes to food, right? You want food, you need to do this. And you say to that government that's run by the Antichrist, no matter what, we're not going to go that direction. Even if God doesn't save me from this being killed by you, being arrested, being murdered by the government, so to speak, I will not bow to you. Man, you could see how this is really a picture of a greater event that will happen, a greater idol that will be set up at some time in the future, where everybody in the world will be told to bow to that image. And this world will. And there'll be some people that won't, right? They will take that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stand. Nope, we ain't going that direction. Very cool. Hey, no problem, Craig. And so Craig said he was dealing with something, and he got some stuff out of the Devo about that. So that's cool. And so it says, then Nebuchadnezzar praised the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Second time we see that Nebuchadnezzar kind of goes this direction after Daniel's interpreting the dream, and now seeing this appearance of this God, so to speak, right? Taking care of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It says, he sent his angel or messenger to rescue his servants who trusted in him. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I make this decree: if any people, whatever their race or nation or language, speak a word against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will be torn limb from limb, and their houses will be turned into heaps of rubble. There will be no God who can rescue like this, for there is no God who can rescue like this. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to even higher positions in the province of Babylon. So we see that Daniel was already exalted to a high place. Now we see his friends being exalted. Young people taking a stand for God. I mean, that's really what this is about. These early parts of Daniel is, young people that, say, hey, you know what? I'm just not going to go that direction. I'm just not going to serve, the world or do what, that is what is common. Instead I'm going to serve God. I'm going to just trust God in my life. Man, that's so radical, and that's such a great stand when it's done right, when it's done in the right way, not in a prideful way. It's just, hey, if God, God's able to save me. If he doesn't, that's okay, because I'm trusting his word, that kind of heart, that kind of wonderful faith, instead of just going, what's this word? Any dead fish can go what? Downstream. Any dead fish can go downstream. It really takes something living to come up. So we see how God provides in a miraculous way through the flames. And, I think that's what God does in our life too. He kind of, provides for us through the fire, right? Through the trial. Jesus is there with us. Jesus is holding our hands, taking care of us, being with us, saying, hey, I'll be with you. I'll help you. I'll help you get to the other side. You just continue to trust me. So some very cool things in the chapter. We see some qualities that we just look at and we go, ugh, I don't know if I want to be like that, right? Am I like that? Do I see that in me? And the answer is yeah. If you're honest, of course you see it in you. You're a lot like Nebuchadnezzar. You're a lot like the astrologers, right? We do tend to rip people apart. We do tend to want to bag on people. It makes us feel better. It makes us feel in control or things like that. We like to laugh at people's mistakes. We have whole entire shows on this kind of idea where people stumble and fall and bail and are addicted and blah, blah, blah. And we watch it, right? And we watch it and we find it and we call it entertainment, right? And we're crazy people. Yeah, it's not hard to find our faults. All we have to do is just look at what we have in our world. It's just a reflection of us. We're the creators of it. So, but then we also see how God, really honors that faith when we trust him and when we stand with him. Jesus says, hey, you confess me before, people, man, I will confess you, before, the angels, the messengers of heaven. Wow, that's radical. Confessing Jesus is my Lord. He is my Savior. He's the authority that I'm trusting. He's the one. That's what we're saying. So anyway, a good lesson. Always, Daniel 3 is always cool. So hey, you guys have a great day. Enjoy it. And we will talk to you soon, okay?